Hi guys, I'm Priyanka Gill. I'm the founder CEO of POPxo, which is a content commerce platform for millennial women, and Plexo, which is an influencer marketplace. You go even younger with that one. So for me, information is actually it's a very interesting concept. When you think about it, most startups are on a hunch. You have some idea about the market size, what the market needs, etc. But actually you go in with a very strong hunch that you then ratify with information and data. As you keep getting more and more data, whether it plays out, it doesn't play out, and then you build on that. So today, POPxo, we create 1,500 stories every month across 6 languages. We create 50, 60 videos every month. 1,500 social media graphics get created every month. All this kind of content at this scale gets created not by hunches anymore, but by actually looking at data. So we see what have users, our female users interacted with in the past, what did they interact with 1, 2, 3, 4, now 5 years ago, what are they looking at right now, what's working on other platforms. All of those different streams of data come into kind of play for us to decide what should we be writing about, making videos about, etc. But this gets even more interesting when we're looking at the second part of our business, which is actually creating private label products. So today we have phone covers, laptop sleeves, doormats, and clocks are our best selling. How do you come up with creating those products? We again go back to data. We look at what's working on social media, which you might find interesting, and that becomes a t-shirt. So today I'm wearing this t-shirt called #blessed. That's a huge theme that we kind of did well for us on social media. It's a t-shirt. So whatever works on social media, millions of women have already ratified that concept, then that becomes a product. We recently launched skincare, and our best-selling face pack is this face pack called Aloe You. It's a play on I love you. This whole I love you concept, as you'd imagine, is huge in our world, and that then became a best-selling face pack. So looking at content, data, information, using that to create content, and then further using all the reactions from that to create product. So for our information flow basically looks like that.
So let me ask you, I mean, there's so much data that I'm sure you're consuming on a daily basis, consumer data, business data. What are the 3 things that are the most important for you? What do you look at on a daily basis on your dashboard? What do you look at on a weekly basis?
What I personally look at right now is the sales that happened the previous day, and that's a base that thankfully grows at a healthy pace right now. We look at how many users came onto our various platforms.
How many users came in today?
So today, well, the day is still, I mean, our peak period is going to start now, but on an average, we'll see around 500,000, 600,000 users that are coming onto the POPxo every single day, yeah.
Wow.
So we have 43 million actives across all the platforms that we're on. And I'm just talking on POPxo platform, not even the other social platforms for the 600,000 users that we'll see today.
Wonderful.
And then last, of course, you look at what is the sales team doing and how much revenue we are sitting on. So those are my 3 main numbers.
Wonderful. I'll come back to you. Meher, I wanted to ask you, you run a big offline, online business. Nyaka is doing very well. 50 stores? How many stores?
50 stores.
50 stores, doing very well. As a business leader, what is it that you don't want to matter to you or confuse you? What is the kind of information that you try, and how do you go about not listening to the kind of clutter of noise that's all around us as a business leader?
No, I think that's a great question. Actually, in an average day, I see more no's than yeses, because the kind of conversations, the number of meetings you're listening in, because you have to be very attentive to all your employees, right? Listening to a lot of people, colleagues, friends, internal, external, and you're getting like basically 100 ideas a day. From that to filter down in terms of what are the 4 or 5 ideas you actually want to invest in.
How do you do that?
Yeah, so the way I spend time on it is, 1, filter those down in terms of my personal filters. What's the company vision? What's the company strategy? Is this going to add value, right? That's one important filter. Second, whatever the data says, is there a business overlay on it? Example, just early days, every product we sell on Nykaa, the most commonly sold product with it is a kajal. So with a day cream, are you going to sell a kajal? And the answer is no. Actually, with a day cream, you'll sell a night cream, because that makes sense, right? So overlay every decision with a business layer of logic in terms of, is it going to add value to a consumer? Is it going to add value to my vision or our company vision in terms of what it's going to do? And then once it's filtered down, we end up having a lot of discussions internally and then prioritizing that. So then we go on a dashboard, like these are the 20 ideas or 30 ideas, and then further filter down in terms of what makes sense. But at the end, it's also a bit of gut feel or vision in terms of what you see versus what other people are seeing, because no 2 people see the same future. Everybody sees a different future. So how do you make sure that you can guide in a particular direction? Because if you don't, you're going to waste a lot of company resources and a lot of company time.
Wonderful. So, Hill, I want to ask you, you have three distinct categories that you're grappling with. You've got a product that caters to the rural market, you've got a product that caters to an older audience, and you've got a product that caters to a younger audience, right? How do you separate your data points, your pieces of information? How do you come to separate these three in your mind? What are the tools, the guidelines that you follow? Tell us about that.
So I think similar but applied differently, right? So I think the first is actually consumer feedback, and I think we've sort of created a protocol in our system that even the senior most leader has to spend one day actually selling in the market, right? Which is you go to the store and you bill to a retailer, right? And that's what really teaches you what is selling and what is not selling. So as a senior leadership team, we spend a lot of time in the field and sell and try and pick up individual nuances of how different target groups are operating, right? So Karma, like gifting, very different operating style, typically bought by a lot more affluent people. Recession and all, like it's sort of a recession-proof product, at least the way it's worked out for us, right? So what you see in rural and how you pick up cues on how people are moving to more value for money purchases, right? And that gives us cue when to take up grammage and when to take down grammage, right? When we look at 2Yum, I think we don't look at grammage at all, and as recession came in the snacks market, the first thing very counterintuitively we did was to reduce the grammage, not increase, right? Because our consumers buy 2Yum because they want to buy 2Yum. And as profitability is under a bit of a stress, the easiest thing for me to do is to take out grammage because the consumer will not care, right? So very different, same set of, same approach, go to the consumer, talk to him, go to the retailer, talk to him, two very different decisions, right? On Evita, we've increased the grammage. On 2Yum, we've decreased the grammage.
Let me ask you, we are in the technology age. Reaching out to the consumer or for the consumer to reach out to you used to be impossible, right? It's much easier now. But there are still very few brands that I find who are actually engaging with the customer meaningfully. How in your life, and I'm going to ask you, three of you, to give me one example where you did a meaningful engagement with a consumer. And we can ask Priyanka first to tell us, you did a meaningful engagement that actually made a difference to your business or alternately to the consumer set that you work with.
I mean, we talk to our users.
No, give me a specific example.
No, look, we talk to our users all the time. That's our bread and butter. And listening in is basically the way that we get engagement as well. If we don't get engagement, we die as a business. I'll give you two examples maybe. The first one was what really makes our users stick. So several years ago, we started this whole social media meme thing, it was a birthday joke to me on my birthday. It just said, tag a Priyanka. Now, Priyanka is a very, very common Indian name. And suddenly on Facebook, we saw this outpouring of every single Priyanka that every single person knew started getting tagged. And that got us lots and lots of users who discovered POPxo at that time. And then, of course, it was working. So then it became Tagger Priyanka, Tagger Pooja. We went down, I think, the 20 most common Indian girl names, and those became our memes for the next next few months or so. So listening to the users, seeing what works, doubling down on what's working, and doing it at scale. Basically, that's kind of what you look at. But on a personal level, I mean, when I'm talking, say, at one point, we spoke to one of these influencers. And at that time, we were working very ad hoc with them, just POPxo reaching out saying, hey, do this campaign with me. And then she said, hey, listen, I would love for there to be some kind of a way that I can actually make consistent money with this. And that was, in a way, the genesis of the idea of POPxo, which is the influencer marketing platform that we have. So, I mean, it was never in our first pitch to investors that there will be an influencer marketing platform one day, but that just literally came out of market need, listening down, and paying attention to something that you've heard at some point of time.
Mihir, tell us one story where either you were able to make a difference to your consumer's life or a set of consumers, or a consumer or a customer was able to really make a deep impact on your business. And how did you?
So I think one thing we ended up seeing, because we are an e-commerce platform, you end up focusing a lot on, generally on a day-to-day, you're focusing on average metrics, right? In terms of performance, you're building everything in the company. what happens with social media and the conversations that our customers have with us, actually that's the tail. So we realize there's a lot of tail conversations and customers are very specifically telling us, right, that we're worried, this is not happening well for us or this is not. So what we did is we set up a different team whose job was to just take care of the tail, right, and tail conversations. So this consumer and a few consumers, when we pulled a lot of those conversations, put into one place, and we realized that we need to start focusing there. And that really made a big difference to the delight and actually changed the NPS score of the company. So these few 5-10 comments on a particular day sort of got everyone's attention in the company and allowed us to change the direction of the company in terms of how we're focusing and where we're investing resources.
So, Hill, are we confusing information with knowledge, with wisdom? How do you see them as different in this information age? Such bombardment of information coming to us. Are we doing that at the cost of knowledge? And where does wisdom come in? Do we even...
No, I think, of course, a lot of information is coming, depends on how you use it, right? So the first thing I do is, at least I personally do a lot of social listening myself, right? So you, of course, have agencies running for you, but my team will tell you I spend more time on social media than at work, but I think...
What do you do on social media? TikTok?
Bit of TikTok, a lot of LinkedIn, still on Facebook, and like I get a lot of flack from my 20-year-olds for that, but part of life. But a lot of time on Instagram. But I think what that has helped me at least is to remain close to the consumer, right? So I think, and one instance I remember very vividly is that this guy irritated with Karma, runs a small cafe, put on Karma, worked very well for day one, did not work on day two. He tagged me on something and said this is not working. I think 1.5 hours later, he was in the cafe, and the reply I put on social media was, there is someone waiting outside your cafe, right? And replacement Karma in 1.5 hours, and that's become over a period of time our norm, right? If you complain on Karma, 2 hours flat, it will be replaced, right? So, and it sort of helped us build the culture in the organization around customer centricity, right? And I think still a lot of effort goes into how to respond, because of course there are occasions when people will make misuse of this as well, right? So we had like complaints like, out of your snack pack, this big piece of like cloth came in, which is impossible, right? So you get all of that as well, but how do you constantly try to delight consumer is at least one big thing we've drawn out of all the information on the social media, etc., content which comes in.
The ticker is telling us 40 seconds to go. So 10 seconds each. Leave us with one deep insight from whatever you've learned in the last whenever. Priyanka?
I go
Deep
deep.
insight.
Okay, so basically for me, as a leader, you have to constantly be growing. So what I was 5 years ago, what I was last year, what I was some time ago, you have to be constantly educating yourself, and that's where wisdom, information, knowledge, all of those basically coalesce, and they separate in many different ways. For me, I read a lot. I read across everywhere that I can find something interesting, and as long as I'm constantly doing that, upgrading my skills, I think we should be okay. So that's basically what I think.
Mihir, deep insight.
I think maybe it's team building. I think balancing different teams in a fast-growing company is actually one of the toughest jobs there is, because you have 10 different departments, each one with a different leader, each growing at a different pace. But to have a pulse on that and hire and build, because the bottleneck is your hardest working team.
Do people still want to work?
Yes, tons. So the hardest working guys, you force them to hire more, and that's how we move forward.
Sohail, one insight.
So I think at least my personal insight is sort of leadership is a privilege, it's not a right? So I think you have to yourself continuously, I think to Priyanka's point, constantly improve and constantly learn to be ahead of the curve. And you don't have to be the best at everything, right? You can hire people who are smarter than you. You can hire people who know more than you. But I think as a leader, the team should be able to see that you are constantly improving and you are being honest about what you know and what you don't know, right? So that to me is very, very important.
Yeah, I think it's becoming very important to be honest with everyone today, including sharing what you don't know. Do we have time for questions, any discussions? I'm not sure how this is. Yeah? Anyone has any questions? Because our time seems to be up. Any thoughts anyone wants to share, please? Yes. Can we have the mic there, please? Who is your question for? Or
I think it's for everybody sitting out there. So you all have built these really successful brands, and all we see is the successes that kind of get highlighted. What I want to understand is what is that you failed at, and that will make for an interesting conversation.
that's a long conversation by itself, but sure.
No, maybe I'll go first. Um, for every 3 products I launch, one succeeds, right? So I think that's the bottom line of it. In fact, the 2 products 2Yum started with, one of them we've like completely taken off the market. The second product we started with is an important brand builder for us, but contributes less than 5% of my sales, right? So I think it is less about what succeeds or what fails, because successes and failures are part of business. I think it's about how quickly do you figure out your mistakes and learn from them and launch better products, launch better services on the back of that, right? So at least that's the effort we do.
Priyanka, you want to go on? Yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah, cut your losses fast and run as quickly as you can. Learn from them as fast as you can. We launched Hindi the first time round a few years ago. We ran it for a year, didn't grow to the point where we wanted. We shut the whole team down. Came back to it a few years later, launched Hindi. Now Hindi is bigger than English for us. So yeah, I mean, failure is part of the game, and you have to be accepting of it. You don't have to judge it. You have to welcome it in many ways. And no one should be scared of failing in the company. It should be, hey, we failed, we learned this, we're moving on from that. So that's really
Brilliant.
important.
Mihir?
I think those two, it's tough to add on that because I think it's the same experience all around when you go through the entrepreneurship curve. It's the same.
Brilliant. Brilliant.